Welcome to the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, the oldest public museum in the world. This video takes you through its incredible history, famous collections, and the stories behind some of its most extraordinary artifacts. From ancient civilizations to modern art, the Ashmolean is a journey through human history, culture, and creativity. The story of the Ashmolean Museum begins in the late 17th century, during a time when Europe was experiencing a growing interest in science, exploration, art, and the natural world. Until then, collections of rare and curious objects were usually kept in private homes of wealthy individuals, scholars, or royal families. These were known as cabinets of curiosity, and they were not open to ordinary people. Only select guests with permission could see them. That all changed in 1683, when a completely new idea was introduced in Oxford, England, a museum that anyone from the public could visit. The Ashmolean Museum officially opened its doors to the public in 1683, making it the first public museum in Britain and one of the first in the world. This meant that knowledge, art, and history were no longer reserved only for scholars and noble families, but could be seen and explored by students, travelers, and everyday people. This was a revolutionary idea at the time because it encouraged learning through direct observation of real objects rather than only reading about them in books. The museum came into existence thanks to Elias Ashmole, an English scholar, lawyer, astrologer, and passionate collector of rare items. Ashmole was deeply interested in history, science, alchemy, nature, and ancient civilizations. Over many years, he gathered books, coins, manuscripts, fossils, weapons, artwork, and natural specimens. One of the most important parts of his collection came from his close friends, John Tradescant the elder and his son John Tradescant the younger. The Tradescants were famous gardeners, explorers, and naturalists who traveled to places like North America, Russia, Africa, and the Middle East. On their journeys, they collected plants, shells, tools, clothing, weapons, and religious objects from different cultures. Their home in London, known as the Ark, was one of the most famous early collections of its time. When they died, Elias Ashmole legally acquired their entire collection and added it to his own. In 1677. Elias Ashmole decided to donate his combined collection to the University of Oxford. However, he made one important request. The university had to build a special building to protect these objects and make them available for public study and learning. The University of Oxford agreed, and construction began on what would become the world's first purpose-built public museum. The building was designed on Broad Street in Oxford, and it was completed a few years later, when the Ashmolean Museum opened in 1683. It was more than just a display hall. It was a place of learning, research, and scientific curiosity. For the first time, visitors could see artifacts from ancient Egypt, coins from the Roman Empire, fossils from prehistoric times, strange animals preserved in glass jars, and rare plants from distant lands. Many people who entered the museum had never seen such things before in their lives. The museum was created not only to impress visitors, but to inspire them to ask questions about nature, history, and the world beyond their own towns and countries. Elias Ashmole wanted the museum to be a place where people could learn by seeing real objects with their own eyes. He believed that knowledge should not be hidden or kept private. Instead, it should be shared openly to help people understand the world. His vision changed history and influenced how future museums around the world would be created and run. Elias, the man whose name the museum carries, was a remarkable figure who lived during a time of great intellectual change in England. Born in 1617, he was not just a collector of objects, but a well-educated scholar, a lawyer, an alchemist, an astrologer, and a supporter of science and learning. He was deeply involved in the early development of the Royal Society, an organization dedicated to scientific discovery. Ashmole believed that studying the natural world, history, and ancient cultures could help people better understand their place in the universe. Although Ashmole was passionate about collecting, he did not personally travel around the world to gather many of the items he owned. Instead, he was a skilled networker who formed strong relationships with explorers, naturalists, scholars, and collectors of his time. This is how he came into possession of one of the most important collections in history, the Tradescant collection. John Tradescant the elder and his son, John Tradescant the younger, were famous botanists and explorers. They traveled widely to places such as Russia, North Africa, the Middle East, and the Americas. During their journeys, they collected plants, animals, seeds, shells, clothing, jewelry, weapons, religious objects, and tools from indigenous cultures and distant civilizations. The Tradescants displayed these objects in their home in Lambeth, London, which became known as the Ark. This was one of the earliest known museums or cabinets of curiosity in England. People from all over the country came to see their strange and fascinating collection. Elias Ashmole admired the Tradescants' dedication to gathering knowledge from around the world. After the younger Tradescant died in 1662, Ashmole legally acquired the entire collection and combined it with his own books, coins, manuscripts, and natural specimens. Some members of the Tradescant family were unhappy with this, but Ashmole insisted that he wanted to preserve the collection and make sure it would not be lost or broken apart. Ashmole did not want the collection to remain in private hands. He believed it should be used for education and scientific study. In 1677, he offered to donate his entire collection to the University of Oxford. This was a generous and visionary decision. However, Ashmole made one condition: the university had to construct a suitable building to properly store, organize, and display the objects so that scholars, students, and the public could learn from them. The university agreed to his terms, and this marked the birth of the idea for the Ashmolean Museum. Ashmole stayed involved in the planning of the museum, providing instructions on how the objects should be preserved and displayed. He wanted visitors not just to look at the items, but to study them closely, compare them, and ask questions about where they came from and what they meant. He also made sure that the museum included a library and laboratory space, so that it could be used for scientific experiments and research. Elias Ashmole died in but his legacy lived on through the museum that carries his name. Without his determination, his careful collecting, and his belief that knowledge should be shared freely, the Ashmolean Museum would not exist. His actions helped shape the future of museums around the world by showing that collections of art, science, and history should be preserved for public education, not locked away in private homes. The first home of the Ashmolean Museum was a specially constructed building on Broad Street in Oxford. This building was unlike anything England had seen before. It was not a castle, not a church, and not a private house. It was designed with a completely new idea in mind, a place where the public could come to learn from real objects, where scholars could study, and where science, history, and art could exist together under one roof. Construction of the building began after Elias Ashmole donated his collection in 1677. The University of Oxford hired architect Thomas Wood to design it. The museum was completed and officially opened to visitors in 1683. The building was called the Ashmolean Museum, and it also became known as the Ashmolean Building or the Old Ashmolean. It stood near the Sheldonian Theatre and the Bodleian Library, right in the heart of the university area. The design of the building was unique because it was divided into different sections, each serving a different purpose. The ground floor was used as a laboratory and chemical workplace. This section was known as the Ashmolean Laboratory. Here, scientific experiments were conducted, especially in chemistry and natural philosophy, which is what science was called at the time. It is believed that this laboratory was one of the first in the world, designed specifically for teaching and research in experimental science. Robert Plot, the first keeper or curator of the Ashmolean Museum, also taught chemistry and conducted experiments there. Above the laboratory, on the main floor, was the museum gallery where Ashmole's collection was displayed. Visitors entered this gallery and found shelves, cabinets, and glass cases filled with objects from nature and from human civilizations across the world. There were stuffed animals, shells, fossils, minerals, plants, ancient coins, Roman pottery, medieval weapons, Egyptian artifacts, and items belonging to cultures from Africa, Asia, and the Americas. For many people of that time, seeing these objects was their first introduction to distant countries and ancient civilizations they had only heard or read about. The upper part of the building held a lecture room and a library. The lecture room was used for teaching and scholarly discussions. The library contained manuscripts, books, and records, including catalogs of the objects in the museum. This combination of a laboratory, a public gallery, and a library made the Ashmolean not just a museum, but a complete learning institution dedicated to research, teaching, and public education. What made the museum truly special was that it was open to the public. Anyone who wished to enter could request permission, and if granted, they were allowed to walk among the displays and study the objects. This was a major shift in society. Knowledge was no longer only for wealthy families, university scholars, or members of the royal court. Now the public could see the wonders of the natural world and the achievements of human history with their own eyes. The early visitors to the museum came from many backgrounds: scholars, scientists, travelers, students, artists, and even curious townspeople. Some came to study specific objects, such as ancient coins or rare minerals. Others simply came to marvel at strange and unfamiliar things, like the preserved body of a crocodile hanging from the ceiling, exotic plants from the Americas, or tools used by indigenous peoples from across the world. However, the Ashmolean was not a modern museum in the way we understand today. There were no display labels explaining each object. Items were often grouped by type or origin, but detailed information was usually recorded in handwritten catalogs kept by the museum staff. The first curator, Robert Plot, was responsible for organizing the objects, guiding visitors, and continuing to expand the collection. This first building on Broad Street remained the home of the Ashmolean Museum for more than 150 years. It marked the beginning of a new era in education and public learning, proving that a museum could be a place of discovery, curiosity, and inspiration for everyone. As the years passed, the Ashmolean Museum continued to grow. Scholars, explorers, and collectors kept donating objects. Archaeological discoveries from Egypt, Greece, and Rome began to arrive. Scientific instruments, paintings, coins, manuscripts, and natural history specimens also increased in number. What had once been a small collection in a single gallery became a vast and overflowing archive of human history and the natural world. The original building on Broad Street could no longer contain it all. Cabinets were crowded, rooms became difficult to navigate, and there was little space to properly care for or display new objects. By the early 1800s, it became clear that a bigger, more modern building was needed. The University of Oxford decided to move the museum to a new location where collections could be stored, studied, and displayed in better conditions. In 1845, the Ashmolean Museum was transferred to a new building on Beaumont Street in Oxford. This relocation marked an important new chapter in the museum's history. The new building was designed in a classical architectural style by the architect Charles Cockerell. It was grand, elegant, and far more spacious than the original Broad Street Museum. The front of the building featured tall columns, large windows, and stone steps leading to a grand entrance. Inside, there were purpose-built galleries, wide staircases, high ceilings, and dedicated rooms for different collections. This design allowed the museum to organize its displays more clearly and professionally than ever before. When the move happened, the collections were divided into two main parts: natural history and art and archaeology. The natural history section included fossils, minerals, stuffed animals, shells, bones, and botanical specimens. The art and archaeology collections included ancient Egyptian objects, Greek and Roman sculptures, medieval artifacts, coins, weapons, and paintings. For a time, both collections were housed together in the new building. However, as the collections continued to grow, they were later separated. In 1860, the Natural History Collection was moved to its own building, which became the Oxford University Museum of Natural History. From then on, the Ashmolean focused mainly on art, archaeology, and historical objects. The move to Beaumont Street also allowed scholars to study the collections more carefully. New rooms were created for research, storage, and conservation. Curators began to catalog the objects more systematically. They labeled items, recorded their origins, and wrote detailed descriptions. This was the beginning of a more scientific and organized approach to museum work. Another important change that came with the move was the development of public education. The museum continued to allow free access to visitors, but now it provided a more structured experience. Galleries were arranged according to time periods and civilizations. Ancient Greek pottery was displayed separately from Roman coins. Egyptian statues and mummies were placed together in dedicated rooms. This helped visitors understand the history and context of each civilization more clearly. In addition to serving the public, the museum played an important role in university teaching. Students from the University of Oxford studied artifacts as part of their education in archaeology, classics, and art history. Professors gave lectures inside the museum, using real objects as teaching tools. This connection between the museum and the university made the Ashmolean a place where academic knowledge and public education worked together. The building on Broad Street, the original home of the museum, was not abandoned. It remained part of the university and was later used for scientific research and teaching. Today, it is known as the Museum of the History of Science. By moving to Beaumont Street, the Ashmolean Museum transformed from a crowded cabinet of curiosities into a modern institution. It now had the space, structure, and organization needed to preserve history properly and to welcome a growing number of visitors from around the world. This move laid the foundation for the Ashmolean to become one of the most important museums in the world. One of the most fascinating and admired parts of the Ashmolean Museum is its collection of ancient Egyptian artifacts. This collection began in the 17th and 18th centuries with small items such as amulets, scarabs, and fragments of pottery, but it began to expand significantly in the 19th century, especially during a time when European interest in ancient Egypt grew rapidly after the discovery of the Rosetta Stone and Napoleon's campaigns in Egypt. Archaeologists and explorers started traveling to Egypt, and many brought back statues, coffins, jewelry, and even mummies. The Ashmolean Museum became one of the earliest institutions in Britain to collect and ensure these materials. Publicly. The Egyptian collection at the Ashmolean is special not only because of its age, but also because of its variety. The museum preserves objects from many parts of ancient Egyptian history, including the Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, New Kingdom, and the Late Period. Visitors can see everyday objects such as pottery, combs, mirrors, writing tools, sandals made of woven reeds, and children's toys. These objects help modern people understand the daily life of ancient Egyptians, how they cooked, dressed, worshipped, and buried their dead. One of the most striking parts of the collection is the display of mummies and coffins. In ancient Egypt, people believed strongly in the afterlife. and they preserved the bodies of the dead through the process of mummification. The Ashmolean has human mummies, animal mummies, and beautifully painted wooden coffins covered with images of gods, hieroglyphic texts, and protective symbols. Each coffin tells a story. Some belong to priests, some to wealthy families, and others to ordinary citizens. Among the most well-known is the mummy of Merit, a temple singer from Thebes who lived around 800 BC. Her coffin is decorated with bright colors and detailed artwork that has survived for over 2 years. Another major highlight of the Egyptian galleries is the Shrine of Taharqa. Was a pharaoh of the 25th dynasty and a king from Nubia, in what is now modern-day Sudan. His stone shrine, originally built in the temple at Kawa in Sudan, was brought to the It is a small sandstone structure with carvings and inscriptions showing Taharqa making offerings to Egyptian gods. This shrine is significant because it shows how Egyptian culture and religion spread beyond Egypt and connected with Nubian history. The museum also holds statues of gods like Osiris, Isis, and Horus, as well as statues of pharaohs and officials. There are fragments of wall paintings, carved reliefs, and pieces of temples that show scenes of worship, daily labor, and offerings to deities. Amulets made of faience or semi-precious stones were worn by both the living and the dead for protection. Jewelry made of gold, lapis lazuli, carnelian, and turquoise demonstrates the incredible craftsmanship of ancient Egyptian artists. In addition to objects from tombs and temples, the museum has archaeological finds from villages and settlements. These include tools used by farmers, fishing equipment, jars used to store grain or water, and writing boards used by scribes. These items offer a more personal and human view of ancient Egyptian society. Far beyond the world of kings and pyramids, another important aspect of the Ashmolean's Egyptian collection is how it has been studied and preserved. Scholars have used hieroglyphic inscriptions to learn the names of individuals, details about their jobs, their families, and their religious beliefs. Conservators continue to carefully protect these objects from damage caused by light, humidity, and time. The museum also works with archaeologists who are still conducting excavations in Egypt and Sudan. Today, by walking through the Egyptian galleries, visitors can travel back thousands of years and gain a deeper understanding of one of the world's oldest and most influential civilizations. From the mystery of mummies to the beauty of ancient art and writing, the Egyptian collection at the Ashmolean shows how people lived, loved, created, and prepared for the afterlife along the banks of the River Nile. The Greek and Roman collections at the Ashmolean Museum are among the most historically important parts of its displays, offering a direct connection to the civilizations that shaped philosophy, democracy, architecture, literature, and early systems of law and government. These collections began growing significantly during the 18th and 19th centuries when scholars, collectors, and travelers from Britain explored ancient sites around the Mediterranean. Many of these objects came from Italy, Greece, and other parts of the former Roman Empire. Over time, the museum became a guardian of statues, pottery, coins, jewelry, and everyday items that reveal the beliefs, creativity, and sophistication of ancient societies. One of the most fascinating elements of this collection is the wide range of Greek pottery. These vases are not simply containers for wine, oil, or water. They are works of art that show scenes from mythology, sports, war, theater, and daily life. Some are painted in red figure style, where red clay figures stand out against a black background, while others use the black figure technique, where dark silhouettes are painted onto the clay and fine details are scratched in. The images reveal stories of gods like Zeus, Athena, Apollo, and heroes such as Heracles and Achilles. They also show moments from everyday life, such as women weaving, men at symposiums, athletes training, and musicians playing the lyre or flute. In addition to pottery, the museum houses marble and bronze statues of gods, athletes, and emperors. Some are complete, while others survive only as heads, torsos, or fragments of limbs. These broken pieces still carry incredible beauty in the careful carving of muscle, hair, and clothing. One example is a marble head believed to represent a Greek philosopher or poet, with deeply carved eyes and a calm, thoughtful expression. Roman portrait sculpture is particularly well represented, showing emperors, senators, and members of wealthy families. Unlike the idealized beauty of Greek statues, many Roman sculptures show realistic features such as wrinkles, scars, and signs of age, revealing a culture that valued individuality and history. The Ashmolean also preserves architectural fragments from temples and public buildings. These include carved stone pieces from columns, capitals with acanthus leaves, and sections of friezes showing gods, warriors, and animals. These fragments help researchers understand how ancient buildings were decorated and constructed. The museum also displays mosaic small pieces of stone or glass, arranged to create pictures which once decorated the floors and walls of Roman villas. These mosaics show animals, mythological scenes, and geometric patterns. Coins are another major part of the Greek and Roman collection. The Ashmolean has thousands of coins made of bronze, silver, and gold. These coins are not just money, they are miniature historical documents. They show the faces of rulers, symbols of power, and important events such as victories in battles. Coins of Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Augustus, and other leaders help historians understand political history, trade networks, and economic systems. Jewelry and personal items offer a more intimate view of ancient life. There are gold earrings shaped like tiny lions, bronze brooches used to fasten clothing, and rings engraved with names or symbols. Items such as oil lamps, glass bottles for perfume, and bronze mirrors reveal the details of daily routines. Tools used by craftsmen, such as iron chisels and bronze needles, show the skills of ancient artisans. Another important part of the collection is dedicated to writing and communication. Visitors can see inscriptions carved into stone or written on clay, tablets using ancient languages like Greek and Latin. These texts include laws, dedications to gods, tomb inscriptions, and names of public officials. They help researchers understand political systems, religious beliefs, and personal stories from thousands of years ago. The Ashmolean has also been deeply involved in archaeological excavations. In the early 20th century, the museum worked on sites such as Naissus on the island of Crete, where the remains of the Minoan civilization were uncovered. Many artifacts from these excavations, including fresco fragments, clay tablets with linear B script, and decorated pottery, are now part of the museum's collection. These discoveries helped historians better understand the civilization that existed before classical Greece. Through these objects, the Greek and Roman galleries show visitors the world of philosophers, soldiers, poets, gods, emperors, and ordinary families. It reveals how ancient civilizations built cities, worshipped their gods, created art and literature, and shaped ideas that continue to influence modern life. One of the most remarkable and historically significant parts of the Ashmolean Museum is its painting and sculpture collection, which includes European art from the medieval period to the modern era. This collection shows how artistic ideas evolved over time, reflecting changes in religion, culture, society, and human understanding. The artworks are not only visually beautiful, they also tell stories about the lives of artists, the beliefs of different eras, and the patronage of kings, churches, and wealthy families who supported the arts. The foundation of the Ashmolean's painting collection began in the 19th century, especially through the efforts of the museum's first art professor, John Ruskin. Ruskin believed that art should be studied closely and that it could teach people about beauty, morality, nature, and craftsmanship. He inspired donations and purchases of works by artists from the Italian Renaissance, the Dutch Golden Age, and later European movements. Over time, more collectors donated their private collections, and the museum acquired pieces from auctions and estates, building a strong representation of major European schools of art. One of the most valuable parts of the collection is the group of Italian Renaissance paintings. These works date from the 14th to the 16th centuries and include altarpieces, portraits, and religious scenes. Artists such as Raphael, Leonardo da Vinci's Circle, Titian, and Paolo Uccello are represented through original works or their workshops. These paintings often show biblical stories, saints, and the Virgin Mary, painted with careful detail, rich colors, and a new understanding of perspective and anatomy. For example, a painting of the Virgin and Child might show the tenderness between mother and baby, while also symbolizing purity and divine love. The use of light, shadow, and realistic space marked a dramatic change from the flat, symbolic style of medieval art. The museum also has important works from the Dutch Golden Age of the 17th century. These paintings are often realistic and focused on everyday life: farmers working, children playing, towns, landscapes, still life scenes, with fruit, bread, flowers, and glass. Artists like Rembrandt, Jan Steen, and Peter Seinredem are represented. These works reveal a growing interest in ordinary people, domestic interiors, and the natural world rather than only religious or royal subjects. Visitors can see detailed brushwork in hair, fabric, metal, and reflections on glass or water, which demonstrate the technical mastery of these artists. Portraits are another key feature of the collection. Paintings from England, France, and Italy show kings, queens, noble families, scholars, and even unknown individuals. These portraits are valuable historical records, revealing fashion, hairstyle, jewelry, and status. Some portraits are highly idealized to make the subject appear powerful and noble. Others show more realistic features, capturing personality and emotion. Sculptural busts and full statues of figures from ancient Rome to modern times are also displayed, often carved in marble or cast in bronze. These sculptures show the human body in incredible detail, with lifelike expressions, muscles, and folds of clothing. In addition to large oil paintings, the Ashmolean holds drawings and prints by artists such as Michelangelo, Raphael, and Albrecht Dürer. These works on paper allow visitors to see how artists planned their compositions, practiced human anatomy, and experimented with lines and shading. Many of these drawings were originally part of sketchbooks and were later carefully preserved and studied by art historians. The museum also features works from the Baroque, Rococo, Romantic, and Impressionist movements. Paintings from the Baroque period are dramatic, with strong contrasts of light and dark, intense emotion, and movement. Rococo works are lighter, playful, and decorative, often showing scenes of love, gardens, and elegant parties. Romantic paintings from the 19th century explore themes of nature, heroism, and emotion, with stormy skies, mountains, and ruins. The Impressionist works display a new way of seeing light and color, using quick brushstrokes to capture moments in time, such as sunlight on water or people walking in a park. Throughout the galleries, visitors can also see framed religious icons, decorative panels, wooden carvings, and early panel paintings covered in gold leaf. All of these pieces show how art was used in churches, homes, and public spaces to inspire devotion, express wealth, or celebrate history. The Ashmolean's painting and sculpture collection continues to grow through gifts, purchases, and collaborations with other museums. It is not just a place to admire beauty, but a space where people can study the evolution of European culture. From medieval faith to Renaissance humanism, from scientific observation to emotional expression and modern creativity, another captivating part of the Ashmolean Museum is its collection of Asian art, which spans thousands of years and includes masterpieces from China, Japan, India, the Islamic world, and Southeast Asia. This collection shows that the museum is not just about Western history, it is a global institution that highlights cultures, religions, and artistic traditions from across the Eastern world. These artworks include paintings, ceramics, sculptures, textiles, metalwork, calligraphy, and religious objects that reflect the philosophies and beliefs of the societies from which they came. The Chinese collection is one of the most extensive and celebrated parts of the museum's Asian displays. It includes ancient bronzes from the Shang and Zhou dynasties, used in ritual ceremonies to honor ancestors and gods. These bronze vessels are decorated with mythical creatures, swirling patterns, and inscriptions. The museum also features delicate porcelain and pottery from the Ming and Qing dynasties, famous for their smooth white surfaces and blue or multicolored designs. Visitors can see finely detailed landscape paintings on scrolls, which often show mountains, rivers, scholars, and poems written in calligraphy. These paintings reflect the traditional Chinese belief in harmony between humans and nature. Jade carvings of animals, symbols of good fortune, and burial ornaments also show the high level of craftsmanship that Chinese artisans achieved. Japanese art at the Ashmolean is equally rich and diverse. One of the most famous items is the collection of ukiyo-e woodblock prints, including works by artists like Katsushika, who created the iconic Great Wave off Kanagawa, and Utagawa Hiroshige, known for his serene landscapes. These prints capture scenes of daily life, kabuki actors, beautiful women, and seasonal landscapes. Alongside prints, the museum displays samurai armor, swords, tea ceremony utensils, and netsuke small carved ornaments once used to fasten clothing. Japanese ceramics, lacquerware, and folding screens decorated with gold leaf and ink paintings demonstrate refinement and a deep connection to nature, poetry, and tradition. The Indian and South Asian collections include sculptures of Hindu gods such as Shiva, Vishnu, and Devi, carved from stone or cast in bronze. The museum also displays Buddhist statues from India, Nepal, and Tibet, showing meditative poses and peaceful expressions. These figures are often adorned with symbolic hand gestures, called mudras, and sit upon lotus thrones. Miniature paintings from the Mughal Empire and the Rajput kingdoms reveal detailed scenes of royal courts, battles, gods, and lovers, painted with fine brushes and natural pigments on paper. These artworks combine elements of Persian, Indian, and Islamic artistic traditions. The Islamic art collection showcases objects from across the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Spain, Persia, and Central Asia. These include intricately decorated tiles, brass lamps, carpets, metalwork inlaid with silver and gold, and manuscripts of the Quran written in elegant Arabic calligraphy. Unlike Western art, Islamic art often avoids depictions of human figures in religious contexts and instead focuses on geometric patterns, floral designs, and script. The Ashmolean has beautifully illuminated manuscripts, prayer rugs, ceramics with blue and turquoise glazes, and carved wooden panels from mosques and palaces. From Southeast Asia, the museum holds sculptures from ancient kingdoms such as Angkor in Cambodia and Java in Indonesia. These include stone carvings of Buddha and Hindu deities surrounded by graceful figures, animals, and decorative patterns. Some objects come from temple ruins and show how religion influenced architecture, art, and daily life in ancient Asian cultures. What makes the Asian art collection especially meaningful is the spiritual and cultural depth behind each piece. Many objects were used in daily worship, meditation, tea ceremonies, torch rituals, or as symbols of power and status. Some items, like scroll paintings, were never meant to be displayed permanently but were unrolled only on special occasions or for private reflection. Others, like temple statues, were created to be seen by worshippers for centuries. The Ashmolean Museum continues to study and preserve these masterpieces. Scholars translate inscriptions, research the history of each object, and collaborate with international experts. Conservators carefully restore paintings, repair ceramics, and protect textiles from light and damage. Special exhibitions and educational programs help visitors understand how Asian art connects to philosophy, religion, nature, and everyday life. Through these galleries, visitors travel across countries and centuries, from misty Chinese mountains to Japanese tea houses, from Indian temples to Persian palaces. The Asian art collection shows the beauty, wisdom, and creativity of cultures that have shaped the history of the world. Another important and fascinating part of the Ashmolean Museum is its collection of coins and antiquities, which provides a timeline of human civilization through the objects people used as money, symbols of power, and tools of daily life. The museum's coin collection is one of the largest and oldest in the world, with over 300,000 coins, medals, and tokens from ancient to modern times. These small objects may seem simple, but they carry incredible historical weight, revealing the rise and fall of empires, the faces of leaders, religious beliefs, trade routes, and economic systems. Ancient Greek coins in the Ashmolean show how city-states like Athens, Corinth, and Sparta represented themselves. Some coins display gods, such as Athena with her helmet and owl, or Apollo with his laurel wreath. Others show mythological creatures like the winged horse Pegasus. Each coin was carefully struck by hand, often using silver, and served not only as currency but also as a symbol of identity and pride for the city that made it. The Roman coin collection reveals the growth of the Roman Republic and the transformation into the Roman Empire. Coins feature portraits of rulers such as Julius Caesar, Augustus, Nero, and Constantine the Great. Roman coins often include inscriptions that tell stories of military victories, peace treaties, or religious reforms. On one side, the emperor's head is shown in profile, while the other side shows symbols like temples, gods, or military standards. These coins were used to spread the emperor's image and messages across the empire, reaching people from Britain to Egypt. The museum also holds coins from the Byzantine Empire, the Islamic Caliphates, medieval Europe, and the British monarchy. Islamic coins are unique because they often avoid images of human figures and are decorated with Arabic inscriptions from the Quran or phrases praising the ruler. Coins from medieval Europe show knights, crosses, and coats of arms. The Ashmolean's British coin collection tracks the history of the monarchy from Anglo-Saxon kings to modern times, with coins showing rulers like King Alfred, Queen Elizabeth I, and Queen Victoria. In addition to coins, the Ashmolean has a rich collection of antiquities, objects used in daily life by people from ancient civilizations. These include pottery, tools, jewelry, weapons, glassware, religious figures, and household items. Pottery pieces show how people stored food, cooked meals, and served drinks. Weapons such as swords, daggers, and arrowheads reveal how ancient soldiers fought and defended their lands. Bronze and iron tools show the work of craftsmen, farmers, and builders. Jewelry pieces made of gold, silver, and gemstones tell personal stories of love, status, and belief. Some rings have carved gemstones with images of gods or symbols of protection. Others contain inscriptions or are shaped into snakes, flowers, or animals. Hairpins, brooches, earrings, and necklaces reflect fashion trends and the skill of ancient metalworkers. Glass objects from the Roman Empire are another highlight. These include bottles, cups, and bowls made using techniques such as glass blowing, which allowed craftsmen to create thin, transparent vessels in beautiful shapes. Some glass still shines after thousands of years, while others have developed iridescent colors from centuries of burial in the ground. Religious and ceremonial objects also form part of the antiquities collection. Small statues of gods, carved altars, and ritual vessels provide insight into ancient religious practices. Figurines of goddesses like Venus or Isis were kept in homes or temples for prayer and protection. Oil lamps shaped like animals or decorated with mythological scenes lit homes and sacred spaces. Each coin and artifact in the Ashmolean tells a part of human history, how people traded goods, honored their gods, ruled their lands, and expressed beauty in everyday life. The museum continues to study these objects, using modern technology like microscopes and 3D scanning to understand how they were made and used. Many items come from archaeological excavation, while others were donated by collectors and scholars through the coin and antiquities galleries. Visitors can follow the journey of human civilization from ancient marketplaces to imperial courts, from peaceful villages to grand temples. These small and silent objects speak of power, faith, creativity, and survival across thousands of years. In addition to its vast collections, the Ashmolean Museum is also a place of continuous research, conservation, innovation, and public education. It is not just a museum where objects are displayed behind glass. It is an active institution where archaeologists, historians, scientists, artists, and students come together to study the past and share their discoveries with the world. This section highlights how the museum functions today, how it preserves priceless artifacts, and how it connects ancient history with modern life. Inside the museum, there are laboratories and conservation studios where experts carefully clean, restore, and protect fragile objects. They study the materials used to create each piece, such as pigments in paintings, metals in ancient weapons, or fibers in textiles. Using microscopes, X-rays, and chemical analysis, they can discover hidden layers of artwork, fix cracks in pottery, and prevent damage caused by light, humidity, or pollution. Every restoration is done slowly and gently, ensuring that the original character of the object is preserved. For example, when working on an old painting, conservators may remove darkened varnish that was added centuries ago and reveal the original bright colors underneath. The museum also works closely with archaeologists who are excavating ancient sites around the world. Artifacts discovered in places like Egypt, Greece, Turkey, and the Middle East are sometimes sent to the Ashmolean for research and preservation. Scholars study these objects to learn more about how people lived, traded, worshipped, and built their societies. They compare new discoveries with items already in the museum to understand connections between cultures and time periods. Many research projects are published in academic journals, books, and online platforms, making the museum an important center of knowledge. Education is another major part of the Ashmolean's mission. The museum offers workshops, lectures, tours, and interactive programs for visitors of all ages. School children come to learn history through hands-on experiences, such as examining ancient tools or trying ancient writing techniques. University students use the collections for their studies in archaeology, art history, classical studies, and more. Adults attend talks by historians, curators, and artists who explain how objects were created, discovered, and interpreted. The museum also creates digital exhibitions and online resources so that people from around the world can explore its treasures without traveling to Oxford. In recent years, the Ashmolean has used technology to make the visitor experience more engaging. Digital touchscreens, virtual reality tours, and augmented reality tools allow people to see how a broken statue might have looked when it was new, or how a temple ruin once stood in its full glory. High-resolution images are available online, allowing viewers to zoom in on tiny details of paintings, coins, and manuscripts. This combination of traditional preservation and modern technology helps the museum stay relevant in a rapidly changing world. Exhibitions and gallery redesigns are constantly evolving. Curators rearrange objects to tell new stories, highlight different cultures, or connect themes such as trade, migration, or religion. Temporary exhibitions focus on specific artists, civilizations, or events. These exhibitions often include objects borrowed from other museums or private collections, allowing visitors to see rare items that are not normally on display. The Ashmolean Museum is also committed to ethical collecting and cultural responsibility. It collaborates with countries and communities to ensure that artifacts are treated with respect and that their cultural significance is honored. In some cases, the museum returns objects to their countries of origin if they were taken during times of war or colonial rule. This careful and respectful approach shows how museums today are rethinking their roles in a global society. Visitors walking through the Ashmolean today can feel the connection between past and present. Ancient objects rest in modern glass cases, illuminated by carefully controlled lighting. Children press buttons on digital displays while scholars quietly sketch statues in their notebooks. Conservators in white coats gently clean a 2,000-year-old vase, while tourists take photos of a Renaissance painting. Every moment inside the museum is a meeting between history and the present day, through its research, preservation work, educational programs, and use of technology. The Ashmolean Museum continues to fulfill the dream of Elias Ashmole and the early founders to make knowledge accessible to all. It remains a place where anyone can walk in, look closely at the world's history, and leave with a deeper understanding of humanity. As the journey through the Ashmolean Museum comes to an end, the story it tells does not simply stay within its walls. It travels with every visitor who walks out of its doors. From ancient Egyptian tombs to Greek temples, from Renaissance masterpieces to Japanese woodblock prints, the museum is a bridge connecting thousands of years of human creativity, belief, struggle, and discovery. Each gallery is a reminder that history is not just a list of dates or names. It is made of people, their ideas, their dreams, and the objects they left behind. Standing in front of a glass case or an ancient statue, visitors are not just looking at history, they are standing face to face with it. They are sharing a moment with a craftsman who carved a stone 3,000 years ago, an artist who painted a Madonna in a quiet Italian workshop, a scribe who wrote prayers onto papyrus in a temple by the Nile, or a soldier who held a coin stamped with the face of an emperor. These silent voices from the past continue to speak, as clearly as they did when Elias Ashmole first imagined a museum dedicated to learning through objects. Today, the Ashmolean remains what it has always been, open to everyone: students, travelers, artists, historians, families, and curious minds from around the world walk through its halls every day. Some come to admire art, some to study, some to find inspiration, and others simply to see something beautiful. No matter their reason, each person becomes part of the museum's ongoing story. The Ashmolean is not just a building filled with objects. It is a living archive of human civilization. It preserves the past, inspires the present, and helps shape the future. And as the world changes, the museum continues to evolve, finding new ways to share its treasures, protect its history, and spark curiosity in the minds of future generations. So when the lights dim and the galleries grow quiet, the spirit of the Ashmolean remains alive in the memories of its visitors. It remains in the questions they ask, the stories they share, and the new knowledge they carry with them. Like a book that never ends, the Ashmolean Museum keeps turning its pages, inviting the next explorer to step inside and discover the world once more.